let's be brutally honest for a second and address the multi-trillion dinar question that's burning a hole in the pocket of every single investor from California to Florida. Can you actually, legitimately, walk into a standard, everyday American bank like Chase, Bank of America, or Wells Fargo today, right now, and smoothly swap your smaller 1,000 Iraqi dinar notes for those highly coveted, larger 25,000 dinar notes without getting a bewildered stare, a polite but firm rejection, or worse, a call from security? The short, stark, and unvarnished answer that the entire dinar community needs to hear right now is a resounding, and for many, a deeply disappointing, no, you absolutely cannot, and anyone telling you otherwise is either dangerously misinformed or deliberately selling you a fantasy that could put your entire investment at serious risk, and I'm going to explain in excruciating, data-driven detail exactly why that is the reality on the ground in 2024 heading into 2025. But more importantly, I'm going to reveal the actual, factual, and incredibly narrow pathway that a minuscule number of investors are using to facilitate this kind of transaction, a process that doesn't involve your local bank branch but something far more specialized and exclusive. The core of the confusion, and the primary source of all this rampant misinformation, stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of what a U.S. bank can and cannot do with a foreign currency that is not freely convertible on the international market, which the Iraqi dinar, despite all the hopeful rumors and prophetic YouTube videos, definitively is not. The Iraqi dinar remains a controlled currency. Its exchange rate is managed by the Central Bank of Iraq, and it is not traded on the global forex markets like the euro, British pound, or Japanese yen, which means your local bank teller, who is trained to handle dollars, euros, and maybe pesos for travel, has zero official procedure, zero internal memo, and zero financial infrastructure to accept your 1,000 dinar note and hand you a 25,000 dinar note in return. It's a logistical and regulatory impossibility for them. Think of it this way, you can't walk into a Starbucks and ask them to swap your 10 $1 bills for a single $1,000 bill, because Starbucks simply doesn't carry $1,000 bills for customer transactions, and similarly, your standard U.S. bank does not maintain an inventory of high-denomination Iraqi dinar notes ready for customer swaps because there's precisely zero retail consumer demand for such a transaction outside of the speculative investment community, which the mainstream banking system does not formally recognize or cater to. This critical distinction between a currency exchange for international travel and a speculative note swap is the linchpin that most gurus conveniently ignore. A bank might, and this is a very big might that depends entirely on the specific bank and the specific branch manager's discretion, facilitate a currency exchange from Iraqi dinar back to US dollars if they have a relationship with a third-party foreign currency vendor, but they are not going to let you trade one form of that same foreign currency for another form of it. That service does not exist in their system. So, if the common bank pathway is a dead end, where does this pervasive idea of swapping notes even come from? The origin of this concept is deeply rooted in the Tier 4B and private exchange narratives that have circulated for years, which suggest that upon a revaluation event, investors would need to have their currency in specific, larger denominations to facilitate easier and more efficient processing at redemption centers. And while the theoretical logic behind that might sound plausible, the practical execution was always misrepresented. The swap was never meant to happen at your neighborhood bank. Before any significant monetary event, the proposed mechanism, according to those insider whispers, was that it would happen during or after a liquidity event at authorized financial institutions specifically designated for that purpose, not your local Chase branch. This leads us directly into the murky and high-stakes world of private exchange companies and so-called authorized dealer networks, which is where the faint glimmer of possibility for a note swap currently exists. But you must tread with the caution of someone walking through a minefield blindfolded, because this is also the primary hunting ground for scammers and unscrupulous dealers looking to prey on hopeful investors. A very limited number of specialized currency dealers, those who operate in the niche of exotic and forex-restricted currencies, may offer a note upgrade or consolidation service for their existing clients, but this almost always comes with a substantial fee, a significant premium on the larger notes, and requires you to already be a verified customer with an established history. And they are not doing this out of kindness, they are capitalizing on the demand and perceived future value, effectively making a market where the official one does not exist. The risks here cannot be overstated. You could be shipping your physical, hard-earned dinar notes to a company with a slick website but no real physical address, only to receive nothing in return, or worse, receive expertly crafted counterfeits that you won't discover are fake until you try to redeem them at a future date, by which time the scam operation has long since vanished. Therefore, the absolute safest, most secure, and most financially prudent course of action for any dinar holder today is to simply hold the notes you have, in the denominations you have, in a secure and safe location, and do not fall for any online scheme pressuring you to urgently upgrade your notes for a hefty fee through some unofficial channel. The time for any legitimate denomination consolidation, if such a thing ever becomes officially necessary, will be communicated through clear, public, and verifiable channels from official institutions, not through a telegram message or a paywalled guru website. The intense focus on note swapping is, in my professional opinion, a monumental distraction from the actual economic and political developments happening within Iraq itself, developments that are the true determinants of the currency's future fate. Engaging call to action note. Before we dive even deeper, if you are finding this raw, unfiltered breakdown of the harsh realities surrounding the dinar investment more valuable than the endless hype cycles you see elsewhere, then you need to be part of this community. Hit that subscribe button and absolutely demolish the notification bell right now, because we are just getting started. And the next section is where we tear apart the official bank procedures and reveal the one document you must have that nobody is talking about. A document that could be the difference between a successful future exchange and a catastrophic rejection, and you will not want to miss this critical intelligence. So, let's surgically dismantle the myth of the standard US bank exchange procedure for Iraqi dinar and replace it with the cold, hard, operational truth of what actually happens when you attempt to liquidate even a small amount of IQD back into US dollars at a stateside financial institution, a process that is far more complex, restrictive, and fraught with hurdles than the gurus would ever dare to admit, starting with the single most important fact: the vast, overwhelming majority of American banks, including all the major national chains, have a strict, corporate-level policy of not dealing in the Iraqi dinar at all, period, full stop, end of story, which means for most investors, the very first question of which banks are accepting is irrelevant because the list is virtually non-existent for the average person. The tiny, almost microscopic exception to this blanket rule exists only at a handful of large money center banks or institutions with a dedicated international desk that maintains relationships with third-party foreign currency wholesalers, and even in these exceptionally rare cases, they are not providing a direct service from the bank itself. They are acting as a reluctant intermediary, a middleman who will take your dinar, ship it to their vendor for authentication, and only then, after a significant fee is deducted, will they credit your account with the US dollar equivalent based on the official CBI rate, not the speculative rate, and this process can take weeks, not minutes. Let's talk about the infamous bank list that circulates online like a holy relic. These lists are almost always outdated, fabricated, or deliberately misleading, naming banks that may have conducted one such transaction a decade ago under a completely different management and regulatory environment. And if you were to call the 1-800 number for any bank on that list today, you would be met with confusion and a definitive no, a potentially embarrassing and time-wasting endeavor that exposes the fragility of the entire narrative. The official procedure, for the few institutions that still entertain the idea, is a bureaucratic labyrinth designed to discourage all but the most persistent individuals. It typically begins with you needing to be a premium account holder, often with a six-figure minimum balance, just to get your foot in the door, followed by an appointment with a branch manager who likely has never handled this request before, requiring them to make numerous calls to their central operations or compliance department, who will then subject the transaction to intense anti-money laundering scrutiny. This is where the concept of Tier 4B is often misapplied. In the context of U.S. banking, there is no such formal classification, but the underlying principle of a structured, tiered redemption for a large-scale currency event is a theoretical framework, not a current banking practice, and confusing the two can lead to catastrophic financial miscalculations. The real, actionable intelligence for 2025 preparations has nothing to do with finding a magical bank and everything to do with documentation and provenance. The single most critical item you possess is not your 25,000 dinar note, but your original purchase receipt or certificate of authenticity from when you acquired the currency. as this document is your primary weapon in the battle against fraud accusations and your best hope for establishing the legitimacy of your holdings in the eyes of any future financial authority. Without a verifiable and clean chain of custody for your notes, you are holding potentially worthless pieces of paper, regardless of their denomination, because the entire system is being designed to filter out and reject any currency that smells of illicit activity, speculation, or being part of a mass dump from an unregulated market. This leads us to the second, and arguably more important, function of the private exchange market. For the vast majority of dinar holders, the only practical way to currently exit their position, for better or worse, is through a private online dealer or a local currency exchange shop in a major city. But this comes with a massive caveat: you will be selling at a significant discount to the official CBI rate, often receiving 20 to 30% less than the currency's stated value, a brutal reality check for those who believed liquidity was just a bank visit away. The psychology behind the swap obsession is fascinating and worth noting. It gives investors a sense of proactive control in a situation defined by profound uncertainty and waiting, creating a tangible task. I must find a 25K note that feels more productive than passively monitoring news from Iraq. But this false sense of progress can be financially detrimental if it leads to paying exorbitant premiums or falling for a scam. The true preparation for any potential future event is not frantic note acquisition but diligent financial and personal organization. This means having your documents in a fireproof safe, understanding the basic tax implications of a potential windfall, ensuring your personal credit is in good standing, and having a relationship with a trustworthy financial advisor who isn't tied to the dinar community, someone who can provide sober, unbiased advice when and if the time ever comes. The landscape is deliberately opaque because the underlying asset is trapped in a geopolitical quagmire. The value of the dinar is not determined by free market forex flows but by the political stability of Iraq, its oil production quotas, its relationship with the United States Federal Reserve, and the slow, painstaking progress of its banking sector reforms, factors that are entirely outside the control of any individual investor in Kansas or Michigan. Focusing on the microscopic details of note denominations while ignoring the macroscopic picture of Iraqi parliament sessions, budget approvals, and international banking agreements is the equivalent of rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. It feels like you're doing something important, but you're missing the iceberg that ultimately determines the fate of the entire voyage. The hard truth is that the dinar investment has always been a high-risk, illiquid, and long-term speculative bet on the complete economic and political transformation of a nation, not a simple currency swap you execute at a local bank window. And understanding that fundamental nature is the first step toward making rational, informed decisions rather than emotionally driven, desperate ones based on fabricated bank lists and guru prophecies. The final piece of this puzzle is the most critical, and it's the one that connects everything we've just discussed to your personal financial safety and future success. Stick with me until the very end, because I am about to reveal the single biggest mistake dinar holders are making right now with their physical notes, a mistake that could automatically invalidate them from any future redemption program, and the simple, 30-second fix you can implement today to protect your investment. And this information alone is worth your entire time investment in this video today. Now we arrive at the heart of the matter, the crucial intersection where theory meets the unyielding pavement of reality, and where your personal strategy must be forged not from hope, but from a clear-eyed assessment of risk, documentation, and geopolitical timing, because the ultimate fate of your Iraqi dinar investment will not be decided by a teller at Citibank, but by a complex cascade of international events, central bank directives, and your own meticulous preparedness for a process that remains largely undefined and shrouded in contingency. Let's address the 2025 timeline that is buzzing throughout the community. While it is true that the Iraqi government has stated goals and frameworks, such as the National Development Plan and ongoing discussions with the International Monetary Fund, aiming to reduce dollar dependence and strengthen the local currency by the middle of the decade, these are policy objectives, not guaranteed triggers for a revaluation, and treating them as such is a recipe for disappointment. As government timelines are notoriously fluid and subject to delay, revision, and political gridlock. The more relevant development to watch is not a specific date on a calendar, but the gradual, often boring, implementation of financial infrastructure, such as the expansion of electronic payment platforms within Iraq, the slow increase in the use of the Iraqi dinar for larger internal transactions like car and home purchases instead of the US dollar, and the Central Bank of Iraq's success in managing inflation and building its foreign currency reserves, as these are the true indicators of a currency gaining underlying strength and stability. This is the organic data that truly matters, not the recycled rumors on forum sites. You should be monitoring the official website of the Central Bank of Iraq for their weekly currency auction results, reading their annual financial stability reports, and following reputable international financial news outlets for analysis of Iraq's economic performance, because this is the raw intelligence that will provide the earliest signals of any substantive change in the dinar's international standing. The concept of RV readiness therefore needs a complete and total redefinition away from note swapping and towards personal and financial readiness. It means having your physical notes stored impeccably, untouched by paper clips, rubber bands, or staples which can cause damage and potentially lead to rejection by sensitive counting machines, and instead kept flat in a protective sleeve or currency holder, away from moisture and direct light, in a high-quality safe. It means having your original purchase receipts, invoices, and any bank wire confirmations scanned, backed up in multiple secure locations, and physically stored with the notes themselves, creating an indisputable paper trail that proves you are the legitimate owner and that the currency was acquired through a lawful transaction, a vital step in navigating the inevitable know your customer and anti-money laundering protocols that will be strictly enforced during any large-scale liquidity event. It means educating yourself on the basic vocabulary of international finance, so you can understand the difference between a managed float and a fixed exchange rate, and what lifting of forex restrictions would actually look like in practice, empowering you to separate the wheat from the chaff in the news you consume and making you immune to the sensationalist claims of gurus who prey on a lack of financial literacy. It also means conducting a sober audit of your own financial and emotional investment in the dinar, asking yourself the difficult question of whether this speculative asset represents a manageable portion of your portfolio or a dangerous, all-in bet on a single outcome, and adjusting your expectations and financial planning accordingly to ensure your personal stability is not wholly dependent on an event that may or may not unfold according to the popular timeline. The private exchange and Tier 4B narrative, while often exaggerated, does point to a logical conclusion, that any significant monetary event for a currency like the dinar would likely be managed through a controlled, structured process involving designated financial institutions, not a chaotic free-for-all at every bank branch in America, and your goal should be to position yourself as the most prepared, documented, and legitimate investor possible to smoothly enter that process, should it ever materialize. This involves maintaining a clean financial profile, settling outstanding debts where possible, and ensuring your banking relationships are in good order, as a bank is far more likely to assist a long-standing, trustworthy client with a complex international transaction than a new customer who walks in off the street with a suitcase full of foreign currency and no prior history. The ultimate call to action, therefore, is not to frantically search for a 25,000 note, but to become a student of the situation, to shift your focus from passive waiting to active, intelligent preparation, building your own knowledge base and personal financial fortress so that you are ready to act with clarity and confidence, regardless of what the future holds. The journey of the Iraqi dinar investor is one of extreme patience and due diligence, a test of one's ability to navigate an ocean of misinformation while holding a steady course towards a distant and uncertain horizon, and the ones who will ultimately succeed, if success is even possible, will be those who value truth over comfort, preparation over prophecy, and personal responsibility over blind faith and anonymous online sources. The path forward is clear. It is just not the easy one that was advertised. It is the path of the educated, the patient, and the strategically prepared individual who understands that in the world of high-stakes speculative finance, the only thing you can truly control is your own level of readiness and the quality of the information you choose to believe. This is the moment where you make the decision that separates the proactive investor from the passive hopeful. You now have the foundational knowledge, the raw data, and the strategic blueprint. The next step is yours. If you are ready to transition from being a spectator to being commandingly prepared, then this is your final call to action. Go beyond just watching this video. Subscribe to this channel for this continuous, unbroken stream of reality-based analysis. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a critical update. But most importantly, act on the intelligence you've just received. Secure your notes. Organize your documents. Become the most prepared person in the dinar community. Your future self, the one who is ready when opportunity meets preparation, will thank you for taking these decisive steps today. Let's get to work.